The towel slipped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow chuckle that bounced off the laundry room tiles, hung in the air like mildew. "You're lucky I even let you touch me," she said, like I was some charity case who'd won a raffle. Like decades of providing, fixing, covering her mistakes, and paying off her credit card messes were just an amusing inconvenience she tolerated out of politeness. She turned, humming, tossing her blouse into the dryer like nothing had happened. I just watched her. Not angry, not sad, something quieter, sharper. I folded the last t-shirt, that old one from the state fair, before the veneers, before the Pilates instructor with the ridiculous name, before she stopped asking how my day was. I folded it with more care than I'd handled her in months. Then I placed it neatly on the stack and walked out. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. A giggle, another message, another little compliment from whoever she thought was her escape hatch. Her voice changed when she texted lately. Lighter, younger, almost giddy. I used to like that sound. Now it just reminded me how much liars enjoy the setup. I caught my reflection in the hall mirror. Wrinkled, maybe slower than I was at 40, but I built machines that carved titanium to half a human hair's width. I ran a team of 20 men who didn't dare miss a measurement. I wasn't some slob hoping for scraps of affection. But in this house, I was a placeholder. And placeholders don't argue. We execute. I went downstairs to my office. That drawer hadn't been opened in a while. Not since I noticed her client meetings at the Burstone Hotel were happening a bit too often and never showed up on the brokerage account's expense reports. Inside was a small, smooth oak box I'd carved myself after retiring. It was meant to hold cufflinks. Instead, it was going to hold clarity. Empty, for now. I opened my laptop. No rush. No drama. Just a man doing what he always did, cataloging, protecting, cleaning up someone else's mess. The folder was still there, waiting for the day she smirked one time too many. First up, email printouts. A realtor friend had CC'd her on messages about fun weekends in Ridge Hill. The dates matched her so-called training retreats. One even included a rental car receipt in her name, with a second driver added. Not me. Then the texts. 6 months ago, I synced her phone to the family iPad. She never noticed. Thought it was just for Netflix in the guest room. One thread stuck out. Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once LOL. Followed by a shirtless mirror pic of him in a Burstone Hotel bathroom. Betrayal, it turns out, has a scent. That place always smelled like lavender and stale desperation. I placed each piece of evidence on my desk in perfect order. The oak box sat beside them, waiting. And in that moment, I knew Vanessa's game had just ended. She just didn't know it yet. She came downstairs that night wearing that smug little robe she saved for moments when she wanted to play affectionate wife. "You didn't say good night," she said, her tone painted in fake concern. "I figured you were tired of touching me," I replied, smiled while I said it. Her eyes blinked in that quick, calculating way liars do. "You're being dramatic." I nodded slowly, like a man who didn't mind being underestimated. Because men like me, we don't need second chances. We need evidence. The house went quiet by 11:17 p.m. She was upstairs, tablet sliding off her chest, podcast still whispering about real estate trends she didn't understand without her assistant. I stayed in my office, desk lamp glowing, the oak box in front of me. The printer hummed. Out came Celeste's emails, those fun weekend ones. Forwarded flights. Receipts. Not a single one tied to our accounts. Vanessa thought I never checked receipts. Maybe she was right, once. But I checked patterns, and people like her always left fingerprints. Next came the iPad. She never realized the backup sync was still active. Her messages were a sugar-coated confession, complete with timestamps. "I needed that last night," she wrote at 1:42 p.m. A board meeting, she'd told me. The he she was talking to? A contractor we once hired to fix our deck. I'd given him a beer. He'd thanked me like a son. I scrolled further. One message stopped me cold. "He's nice but dull." A placeholder. My life started late. Dull. Placeholder. I breathed out slow, saved the screenshots, and dropped them into a USB folder labeled June Justice. Encrypted. Backed up. Copied 3 times. 1 flash drive, 1 cloud, and 1 offsite. Vanessa had called me slow for years. "You move like you're buffering," she once joked in front of friends. They laughed. I smiled. Slowness isn't weakness. It's precision. And precision was exactly what was going to make her fall apart without me ever raising my voice. It started with a text. Running late, big client dinner. She wrote at 6:14 p.m. Funny thing was, I was parked across the street from the Burstone at 6:15. Through the restaurant window, I saw her, Vanessa, laughing like the whole world was in on her joke. She had that head tilt I used to think was cute. Across from her sat the contractor. Our contractor, fresh haircut, new watch, leaning in like he'd been promised the moon. I didn't walk in. I didn't make a scene. I snapped a picture through the tinted glass, zoomed in until the big client in her lie had a name, a face, and the hand on her knee. Later that night, when she waltzed in smelling like overpoured wine and a perfume she didn't wear for me anymore, I was already at the kitchen counter, sipping tea like I'd been up late reading. "You're still awake?" she asked, dropping her keys in the bowl. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "You?" She hesitated. "Dinner ran long. You know how clients are." I nodded, set my tea down, and slid the photo across the counter. She froze mid-breath. What is that supposed to be?" she said, forcing a laugh. "A pattern," I replied. "And patterns tell stories." For the first time in months, her voice caught when she spoke. "You're being paranoid." "Maybe," I said, turning the photo back toward me. "But paranoia is just intelligence gathering in advance." I left her standing there in the kitchen, the picture between us like a quiet grenade. Upstairs, I put the photo in the oak box, locked it, and placed the key in the same spot I kept my watch. Because every day from here on out, I'd be counting the hours until she didn't see me coming anymore. I knew she wouldn't sit quietly. Vanessa was many things. Loyal wasn't one of them, but persistent? That she had in spades. By the next evening, she was already trying to rewrite the script. She floated into my office like a cat that had just knocked over a vase and decided to purr her way out of it. "We need to talk," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "About what?" I didn't look up from my laptop. "You've been off," she said, choosing her words the way a pickpocket chooses a mark. "Secretive. Distant. I feel like you're hiding something from me." I almost laughed. Hiding something? The oak box sat right there on my desk, locked but plain in sight. Evidence wasn't hiding, it was ripening. "What makes you think that?" I asked, keeping my voice flat. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing like she was studying me for cracks. "Because you've stopped asking where I'm going. You don't check in anymore. It's weird. Thought you didn't like when I checked in," I said. "You once called it clingy." "That's not what I meant," she said quickly. I need to know if something's wrong between us." The performance was good. The concern in her eyes might have fooled me once, back when I thought she still believed in us. But now I saw the twitch in her jaw, the way her gaze flicked to my desk drawer for half a second too long. She wasn't here to fix things. She was here to fish. So I gave her bait. "I've just been busy," I said with a shrug. "Work projects. You know how it is." She smiled then, a tight little smile of relief. Or maybe victory. She thought she'd diffused something. "Well," she said, "if you're busy tomorrow night, I might have dinner with Celeste." "Sounds nice," I replied without missing a keystroke. That threw her. I could feel her pause in the doorway. She'd expected a question. Maybe an argument. Instead, I'd given her the freedom she thought she wanted. And nothing makes a manipulator more nervous than you not reacting to their moves. She left, and I waited until I heard the bedroom door close before opening the oak box. I added a note. November 14th, preemptive guilt play. Shifted blame. Suspect attempt to locate evidence. By morning, she'd escalated. I came downstairs to find her in the kitchen, hair perfectly done for someone supposedly working from home. A cup of coffee in one hand and her phone in the other. She was on speaker with someone, laughing in that bubbly way she reserved for men she was trying to impress. "Oh, absolutely," she said. "We'll have to do it again soon. Same place." She caught my eye, smiled sweetly, and ended the call. "Morning," she said. "Morning." I reached for the fridge. "That was the contractor," she added casually. "He wanted to thank me for helping with his business networking." I almost admired the boldness. She was stress testing me, seeing how far she could push the lie. "Always good to help the local economy," I said, pouring milk into my coffee. If she was expecting me to slam the fridge door or demand answers, she got nothing. Just calm, measured indifference. The kind that keeps people guessing which page of the book you're on. The truth was, I'd already been on his page. 3 days earlier, I'd had lunch with a mutual acquaintance, someone who'd worked with him before and had stories to tell. Turns out, he had a history of getting involved, with clients, especially ones with money or influence. He'd pulled the same act twice before, charming, attentive, then leveraging the relationship for referrals and contracts. I recorded the conversation, added it to the folder. That afternoon, while Vanessa was in her home office on a video call with Celeste, at least that's what she claimed, I called my attorney. We discussed options. We talked about timing. Most importantly, we talked about control. Revenge isn't about volume, he said. It's about precision. You don't want her to know you're coming until you're already in her blind spot. By the time Vanessa emerged for dinner, I'd made my first move. Subtle, almost invisible. I'd locked down our joint savings account, temporarily for security verification, according to the bank's automated message. She wouldn't notice until she tried to access it for something bigger than groceries. Dinner was chicken and rice. She pushed her food around the plate like a bored teenager. I was thinking, she began, we should do a weekend getaway. Just us. Clear the air. I sipped my water. That's an idea. She looked up, clearly surprised I hadn't rejected it outright. So you're in? Could be good, I said. Might even be clarifying. That night, she went to bed early. I stayed in the office, the glow of the desk lamp throwing long shadows across the oak box. I opened it, ran my fingers over the neat stack of evidence. Photos, receipts, screenshots, recorded conversations. Every piece of paper was a brick. Every file was mortar. And the wall I was building wasn't to keep her out. It was to keep her in, until I decided the door would open. The real beauty of it was, she thought she was still in control. She thought the little robe and fake smiles, the strategic mentions of other men, the innocent, networking dinners were still getting under my skin. But the truth? I was already a mile ahead, watching her run toward the cliff she couldn't see. And I was making sure she'd get there right on schedule. The next morning, I made coffee and whistled while I worked. Vanessa glanced at me over the rim of her mug. You're in a good mood, she said. Just thinking about the weekend, I replied. She smiled, and for the first time in months, it almost looked real. Almost. But if she thought it meant I'd forgiven her, she hadn't learned a damn thing. The plan was hers, but the execution was mine. Vanessa suggested the cabin with the lake view, 3 hours north, all glass windows and exposed beams, the kind of place couples in Instagram ads use to reconnect. I agreed instantly, not because I wanted to reconnect, but because cabins are perfect for two things, privacy and the kind of silence that makes a liar nervous. She booked it on her card. I didn't offer to split the cost. In her head, that probably meant she still had the upper hand. We drove up on a Friday afternoon. She was in high spirits, playing her curated road trip playlist, half love songs, half whatever trendy background music influencers use for vacation reels. She reached for my hand once, the way she might in an old memory, but I kept both on the wheel. Her fingers lingered in the air before retreating. The cabin was as advertised, pristine, secluded, and quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat. She walked in ahead of me, spinning slowly like she was inspecting a stage before a performance. This is going to be good for us, she said, running her hand along the polished kitchen counter. Definitely, I replied, setting down the cooler I'd brought. She didn't ask what was in it. That was the thing about Vanessa. She'd stopped asking questions unless the answer could be used against me. We unpacked in silence. She claimed the larger of the two closets without a glance in my direction. I let her. You don't argue with someone over space when you've already claimed the real territory. Dinner was simple, steaks on the grill, a bottle of wine she'd picked up from some boutique shop. She kept refilling her glass, leaning on the kind of flirtation she thought could erase months of contempt. Feels like old times, doesn't it? She said after her second glass. Sort of, I said. Only difference is, old times didn't have so many secrets. Her eyes flicked up sharply, a split second before she laughed it off. You're still on that? I told you, you're imagining things. I didn't respond. I just cut my steak slowly, deliberately, the sound of the knife on the plate filling the space where her excuse should have been. She tried again after dinner, sitting beside me on the couch, scrolling through her phone while pretending to watch the fire. Every so often she'd angle the screen away. I didn't need to see it. I'd already set my little trap days before. A tech friend owed me a favor. He'd shown me how to mirror her texts to a cloud account without her ever noticing. I had a live feed to her messages in my pocket, and that night, while she showered, I sat on the deck under a sky full of stars, reading them in real time. The contractor, Mr. Ridge Hill himself, had texted, "Hope you survive the weekend with him. You're a saint." Her reply, "3 days, and then I'm back." He's not as clueless as I thought, though. Might need to speed things up. Speed things up. That was fine by me. When she came out in her robe, hair damp and smelling like the expensive shampoo she never shared, I was back inside, poker-faced. "Your turn," she said, gesturing toward the bathroom. I nodded, and as I walked past her, I reached over to the oak box on the coffee table. She didn't know I'd brought it. I opened it just enough for her to notice the stack of manila envelopes inside. Her eyes followed it like a cat watching a mouse. "What's that?" she asked. "Just work stuff," I said. "I like to keep busy." The rest of the night passed in the kind of strained peace you only get when two people are lying to each other in opposite directions. The next morning, I made breakfast, eggs, toast, and her favorite overpriced coffee blend. We ate on the deck, the lake smooth as glass below us. She talked about maybe inviting friends up next time, making this our spot. I let her paint that little fantasy. Let her think there'd be a next time. Around noon, I suggested a hike. There was a trail that looped around the far side of the lake. She agreed, grabbing her phone and sunglasses. Halfway through, we stopped at an overlook, a cliff with a view of the water and the cabins scattered along the shore. I handed her a water bottle from my pack and leaned against the railing. "Beautiful, isn't it?" I said. She nodded, sipping. "It really is. I'm glad we came." I pulled my phone from my pocket. "Me too. You know what's even better? This." I tapped the screen. A small speaker in my backpack crackled to life, playing the sound of her own voice. "3 days, and then I'm back." He's not as clueless as I thought, though. Her grip on the water bottle tightened. What is that?" "Your words," I said, watching her carefully. "Straight from your phone." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You went through my..." "No," I interrupted. "I didn't go through anything. I just listened." She stepped back, looking for something to grab onto. An excuse, a lie, maybe even the railing behind her. "You're twisting things. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand that you've been underestimating me for months. I understand that you've been building a new life while still cashing in on this one. And I understand that you think you can control the ending." She glared at me, the mask slipping. "So what now? You going to throw me off a cliff?" I smiled. "No, Vanessa. That would be too quick. I'm going to let you walk back down that trail, thinking you still have options. And then, when we get home, you'll find out that you don't." We hiked the rest of the loop in silence. She didn't touch her phone once. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Because the game was no longer about catching her. It was about closing the trap in a way she'd never see coming until the door was already locked. And in the morning, when she suggested we cut the trip short, I agreed instantly. After all, the real show was waiting back home. The drive home was quiet. Too quiet for Vanessa. She normally filled silences with little digs disguised as jokes or backhanded compliments about how nice it is when you finally make time for us. Not this time. She stared out the passenger window most of the way, legs crossed, arms folded, sunglasses on even though the sun had dipped behind a bank of clouds. The occasional vibration of her phone in her lap told me she was still in contact with him, probably planning the debrief once she was out from under my roof for a few hours. I didn't call her on it. Not yet. We pulled into the driveway just after 4. She headed straight upstairs without offering to help with the bags. Typical. I carried mine into my office and set the oak box on my desk. It looked heavier now, like it had absorbed the weight of everything it contained. While she unpacked, I opened my laptop and pulled up the financial dashboard. A week ago, I'd had my attorney execute a little shuffle, moving certain funds into accounts she couldn't access without my approval, flagging others for suspicious activity so the bank would freeze them temporarily. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make her plans inconvenient. And tonight, those inconveniences would start to pile up. By 6 p.m., she came downstairs in her going-out dress, navy blue, low cut, the one she once claimed was just for us back when us meant something. "I'm meeting Celeste," she said, grabbing her keys. "Have fun," I replied without looking up from my screen. That stopped her. She tilted her head. "You're not even going to ask where?" "You already told me," I said. "Celeste." Her eyes narrowed, like she was waiting for a punchline that never came. "Right," she said finally, and left. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I set the plan in motion. First, I forwarded the June Justice folder from my encrypted drive to my attorney. Then I uploaded a copy to a cloud service with a timeshare link, set to activate at midnight and send to every member of her family, her closest friends, and, yes, her precious Celeste. Screenshots, photos, voice recordings, receipts, it was all there. Next, I sent a short, polite message to the contractor from a throwaway email account. You should know Vanessa's husband has all the details. Expect a call from your wife's lawyer within the week. He didn't have a wife, of course, but I knew men like him. The idea of legal trouble was enough to make them sweat, and sweaty men make mistakes. By the time she returned at 10:30, I'd already poured myself a whiskey and was sitting in the living room, TV on but muted. She breezed in, smelling faintly of wine and whatever cologne he wore, tossing her purse on the couch. Long night? I asked. She gave me that fake laugh. Traffic. Of course, I said, taking a slow sip. Hey, you might want to check your phone. Her brows knitted. Why? No reason, I said. Just, maybe keep it close for the next couple of hours. She went upstairs. I could hear her moving around the bedroom, the sound of hangers sliding on the closet rod. Then, faintly, her phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. Footsteps hurried across the floor. A door slammed. Silence. I gave her 10 minutes before following. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, scrolling furiously. What did you do? She demanded. Nothing, I said, leaning against the doorway. Just shared some memories with people who might appreciate the full picture. Her face drained of color. You can't. I can, I said. And I did. Midnight. Every person in your contacts who isn't me will know exactly who you've been for the last 6 months. She stood, voice rising. You're going to ruin me. I shrugged. You did that yourself. I'm just making sure the credits roll at the same time for everyone. She tried to pace, but the room felt too small for her sudden panic. We can fix this. We can delete them. No, I said. We can't. The files are out. The links are live. And even if you convinced me to stop, which you won't, they're still on a dozen drives and servers you'll never touch. She stopped, breathing hard. You think this makes you the bigger person? I'm not aiming to be the bigger person, I said evenly. I'm aiming to be the last one standing. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, realizing there was nothing left to bargain with. You'll regret this, she said finally. I smiled. I don't think I will. The rest of the night passed in uneasy silence. She stayed upstairs. I stayed downstairs, reading, sipping, waiting for midnight like a man waiting for fireworks. When the clock struck 12, I didn't need to check my phone. I could hear hers vibrating from across the house, short bursts, long rumbles, the chaotic chorus of a life coming apart. I poured another drink. It wasn't joy I felt. Not really. It was relief. The kind you get when you finally put down something heavy you've been carrying too long. Upstairs, her world was catching fire. And for the first time in months, I felt warmed. I woke up to the smell of burnt toast. Not the romantic kind. More like the someone's too distracted by incoming hate messages to notice the smoke kind. Vanessa was at the kitchen counter, hunched over her phone, thumbs moving in frantic bursts. Her hair was a mess, her makeup from last night still smudged. You happy? She said without looking up. I poured myself coffee. I don't know. You tell me. You've humiliated me, she said, voice shaking, not from guilt, but from rage at losing control. Celeste won't take my calls. My mother's blocked my number. And Ridge Hill, the contractor, I corrected. She shot me a glare. Has pulled out of a big deal. People think I'm some kind of serial cheater. I sipped my coffee. People don't think that, Vanessa. They know it. Her eyes flashed. I could sue you. I set my mug down and leaned in just enough for her to see I wasn't bluffing. Try it. Discovery will be public. I'll get to show a judge everything. You'll get to pay my legal fees. We both win. She swallowed hard. And for the first time since this began, she looked smaller. By noon, she'd gone quiet. That worried me more than her yelling ever could. Quiet meant scheming. Sure enough, she came to my office in the afternoon, hands clasped in that faux humble way she used when she wanted something. What if, she began, we keep this between us? No lawyers. No divorce. We reset. Reset? I asked. She nodded. We stay married, keep the house, keep the accounts. You delete all that. We start fresh. I leaned back. Why would I agree to that? Because I can make it worth your while, she said, her voice softening. We can go back to the way things were. I shook my head. The way things were is how we got here. Her mask cracked for a split second, anger flashing through before she replaced it with a smile. Think about it, she said, leaving the room like she'd just given me a gift. But I wasn't thinking about it. I was finalizing the second wave of my plan. The first wave destroyed her reputation. The second would dismantle her resources. 2 days later, her debit card was declined at the grocery store. She came home fuming, slamming bags on the counter. You froze everything? She demanded. Not everything, I said. Just the accounts with my name on them. That's all of them. Exactly. She stared at me like she was realizing I'd been playing a much longer game. What do you want from me? She asked finally. Nothing, I said. That's the point. I don't want anything from you ever again. That night, I sent her an email with a simple PDF attached. A clean, one-page divorce agreement. No alimony. No claim to my assets. Just the keys, her personal belongings, and a very small transfer to cover immediate relocation needs. She didn't reply, but the next morning, the signed document was on my desk. She moved out on a Thursday, took the beige Range Rover, her clothes, and the dignity she had left, what little of it survived. I watched from the porch, coffee in hand, as the moving truck pulled away. By Friday, I had the locks changed. On Saturday, the contractor showed up at my door. He looked rough, unkempt, eyes bloodshot. We need to talk, he said. I shook my head. We really don't. She's ruined me, he blurted. That file you sent, people are saying I'm some kind of predator. I've lost 3 contracts this week. I let him talk until he ran out of breath. Then I smiled. That's rough, buddy, but it's not my problem. As he turned to leave, I added, by the way, she told me you were just a phase. You weren't supposed to last past Christmas. He froze, then walked off without another word. I went back inside, poured myself another coffee, and sat at my desk. The oak box was still there, but now it was empty. I'd burned the contents in the fire pit last night, not out of mercy, but because the job was done. Vanessa thought she'd get the last word. She thought she'd walk away with her money, her reputation, and her little side romance intact. Instead, she walked away with nothing. And me? I walked away smiling. Because the best revenge isn't loud. It's permanent.